The terrorism against the police conducted by some protesters last summer and autumn was appalling. Besieging police stations, they brazenly aim laser beams and hurl bricks at police's officers. Some police officers suffered burns after being hit with petrol bombs. Sadly, most of the media was indifferent to this thuggish behavior, but concentrated on criticizing the police. Last autumn, 3 curious incidents hit the headlines. The first one is about a Hong Kong woman shot in her ride during a protest in Tsim Sha Tsui on August 11, 2019. In the wake of this tragedy, many reporters pointed the finger at the police, depicting the incident as an example of police brutality. The woman also alleged that her injury was a result of suspected bin background shot by anti-riot police. In fact, there were conflicting representations of this incident in social media. A picture of the woman with blood in her injured eye and a police beanbag can by the side went viral in anti-government online discussion forums. Meanwhile, some groups in support of the police, however, post the picture without decan. A Queen Elizabeth Hospital nurse attending the woman later even claimed in her Facebook that her injury had been caused by a projectile widely used by rioters. More importantly, during a press conference, the police stressed that they had arrived at the scene after the woman got injured. Therefore, it is highly likely that her injury had nothing to do with the police. According to the police, they were probing into this incident, thus asking the victim and witness to come forward. Curiously, the injured woman refused to report to the police. On the contrary, she even issued a legal letter through her lawyers to block the police's bid to access to her medical records, which supposedly were helpful to the police investigation. A couple of intriguing questions arise here. Why did she disallow the police to examine her medical reports? Was it because she later realized she was not shot by the police but accidentally by one of the rioters? While some were finding fault with the police, they should realize that if they had avoided any illegal assembly, if they had heeded the police warnings to disperse, it would have been impossible for anyone to get hurt. While there was no hard evidence to suggest that her injury had been a result of the police action, it was very irresponsible of the media to launch an attack on the police. Worse still, these baseless criticisms of the police did incite many young protesters to illegally occupy the airport afterward, thus bringing Hong Kong air transport to a virtual standstill. Secondly, the police was recently blasted for the mishandling of volunteer emergency medical providers at Hong Kong Polytechnic University on November 17, 2019. For instance, in an article entitled International Humanitarian Norms Are Violated in Hong Kong published by the leading medical journal Lancet, Dr. Darren Mann, a Hong Kong-based surgeon, has accused the police of violating international norms after some self-proclaimed medical workers were arrested. Unfortunately, his article, devoid of background and context, has easily created a misleading impression, thus misrepresenting the police as villains. Prior to Dr. Mann's arrival at the scene, more than 1,000 rioters had in fact illegally occupied Hong Kong Polytechnic University. To keep the police out of the university, the rioters recklessly turned the campus into a fortress. They ruthlessly raided classrooms of furniture to block the entrances and transformed student common rooms into weapon factories. Hazardous chemicals were stolen from laboratories. Thousands of bombs were made and hoarded on campus. The arms of rioters were primitive compared to those of the police. However, they had turned to be extremely combative and savage as the conflict reached its climax. They relentlessly fended off the police with rocks, slingshots and bows and arrows. One officer was hit in the calf with an arrow. They also used such lethal weapons as catapults to hurl metal objects. Engaged in fierce battles with the police, rioters very often hurled fire bombs, and at one point an armored police vehicle was engulfed in flames. They set fire to the footbridge and the toll booths, leading to the closure of a major tunnel linking the Kowloon Peninsula and Hong Kong Island. To be sure, what the rioters did was posing a great threat to social stability. The police had to figure out a way to de-escalate the violence to avert more tragedies. On November 17, 2019, the police therefore issued an announcement, emphasizing that rioters on campus had no option but to come out and that any person present within the university building complex after the time would be arrested for rioting. The police also broadcast their plan to enter the campus by force. However, the raid never happened because the police did their utmost to avoid casualties and instead chose to wait them out in a battle of attrition. This unique wait-and-catch tactic had proven to be effective. As the government has recently pointed out, throughout the incident, rioters and others inside including members of the media and first aid providers were repeatedly asked and given opportunities to leave the campus peacefully. Many took up the offer. In fact, quite a lot of medical workers including Dr. Mann as well as rioters listened to the police and left the campus peacefully. As Dr. Mann has disclosed in his article, there was discussion among the medical teams and it was decided that those with hospital-based specialties should depart to be stationed in casualty-receiving hospitals. His team successfully left the campus and made their way to hospital. Unlike Dr. Mann's, a group of medical workers, departing the campus late, were arrested. He has complained in the article, a photography, widely circulated online, shows at least 16 individuals sitting on the group with their hands bound behind their backs with zip cords. They are wearing high-visibility vests with descriptions of doctor, nurse, and EMT, emergency medical technician. These people were all arrested for taking in a riot. The actions of the Hong Kong police force have fallen far below accepted international norms for the handling of volunteer emergency medical providers. The arrest of these personnel is almost unheard of in civilized countries and is incompatible with the compact of humanitarianism. Dr. Mann's accusation, however, is not convincing. A few important questions arise here. First, How can be Dr. Mann so certain that all of the 16 individuals were medical workers although they were invests with descriptions of their medical profession? Dr. Mann's accusation, however, is not convincing. A few important questions arise here. First, how can be Dr. Mann so certain that all of the 16 individuals were medical workers although they were invests with descriptions of their medical profession? Was it possible for rioters to masquerade as medical workers by wearing the vests for fear of arrest? As the police later explained, some of the individuals were incapable of providing any healthcare professional credentials to verify their identities. More importantly, even though some of them probably were medical workers, was it possible for them to be involved with the riot or attack on the police as well? If so, it was not unreasonable for the police to arrest the man probed into their possible involvement with the riot. The police, concerned about the injuries of the rioters on campus, made it clear that government ambulance crews could come over and ferry out the injured ones upon request. Sadly, this offer was rejected by the rioters for fear of identification and arrest. Bear in mind that the medical care provided by volunteers on the campus was certainly not sufficient compared to those of public hospital. The active volunteer medical providers like Dr. Mann seem to have inadvertently emboldened the rioters to stay on the campus to the neglect of the growing need for hospital treatments. If the volunteer medical providers were really the champions of humanitarianism and cared about the health of the rioters as Dr. Mann suggested, some would wonder why the volunteer medical workers like Dr. Mann did not do their utmost to persuade the injured rioters to seek emergency care through the public hospital system. After all, the physical well-being of the injured ones should take precedence from a humanitarian perspective. Given the reluctance of the rioters to seek help from the government ambulance crews, the police also allowed the Red Cross to convey the wounded off the campus. In mentioning the rescue by the Red Cross, Dr. Mann lambasted again. The team arrived at the cordon of protest zone but did not receive police approval to enter until more than 2 hours later. Furthermore, the police had set a time limit for 3 hours for their mission. This allegation has implied that the Red Cross medical workers were blocked from treating injured protesters. Nothing, however, is further from the truth. In response to Dr. Mann's false allegation, Hong Kong Red Cross has later clarified, through the coordination and communications with different parties, including Hong Kong Police Force, our first aid team provided first aid service to anyone in need in the campus, without any delay, obstruction or impolite treatment. The arrangement and duration of the HKRC's services are decided after due consideration on service needs, capability of the HKRC and safety factors. According to the Article 11 of Geneva Accords, Protocol 2, medical units and transports must at all times be respected, protected and not be the objects of attack. Up to now, there has been no credible report that the actions of Hong Kong police violate the spirit or letter of Article 11 of the Geneva Convention, Protocol 2, which guarantees the protection and respect of medical units. The shame is not that a police is using necessary force to bring order to chaos on the campus. The shame is how the rioters, disregarding the rule of law, wreaked destruction on the facilities of one of our best universities. The shame is how some twisted the facts to misrepresent the Hong Kong police forces as villains. Finally, the media very often lambasted the police for dressing as rioters and mingling with them to make arrests last autumn and winter. Nothing, however, is more absurd than this accusation. As Tony Kwok, the former head of the ICCC, a local anti-graft watchdog, eloquently explained, this is just normal undercover carried out by all law enforcement agencies. ICCC officers did it all the time to crack corruption syndicates while FBI agents infiltrate terrorist groups to intercept terror plots. Police confirmed that the undercover operation was targeted at a number of key riot organizers. There are strict rules for undercover operations for police and the ICCC, which were approved by the Department of Justice. One states very clearly that undercover officers are not allowed to incite any crime. They cannot be agent provocateurs. The insinuation that they may have incited riots is totally untrue and highly irresponsible. On the contrary, they are not allowed to conduct any illegal activities. Rather than besmirching these brave officers who went undercover to conduct dangerous investigations, they should be commended.